But let's get things underway in any case. Thank you all so much for joining. And like I was mentioning before, this is the very first webinar of the year from Digital Mindfulness. And one of the first things I would say from the outset is to ask me any questions that you have at any time. Just use the Q&A box. It's just there. Send through any questions or tweet them through or email them to me. And what I'm going to do is just batch everything together and just answer them at appropriate points in the webinar. So ask me any questions that you have at any time at all. So this webinar today, what are we going to be talking about today? Well, obviously, focus and productivity in a digital age. These are two of the big things that we're going to really be talking about. And that's really what I want to leave you with today. I want you to walk away having 5 concrete steps, 5 concrete things that you can use right now to become more focused, more productive in a digital age. And also, I really like you to have a better understanding of what digital mindfulness is. Digital mindfulness is a term that's been, I don't know, difficult to pin down. It's been a bit grey, a little bit amorphous, but I'm really going to give you the way that we describe it here, the way that we have defined it. So this is going out now live on YouTube, and I can see that the microphone is working okay. Again, if there are any problems at all, please let me know. If you can't hear me, if there's a glitch and I happen to pop out at a particular moment, please let me know, and I'll personally send you through the edited version through into your inbox. So this overall presentation, it should take about an hour, including any questions that you might have. These webinars that we're going right now, they're going to focus on different areas of digital mindfulness, and you're actually in luck because you're part of the first group of people to know that we're going to be starting different sessions, what we're calling them breakfast sessions, because we're going to have them pretty much first thing in the morning as you make your commute on your way to work, and we're going to be talking about different aspects of digital mindfulness and how it affects your life being digitally mindful. So tune in. We're going to be having these sessions from next week. I'm going to be in touch by email. They're going to be on the website, but this is the very first of a new series of insights that we're going to be sharing with you. So let's start now with the overall presentation, and there you go, that should be working now. So do any of these now sound familiar as we go along our digital journeys every day? Do any of these sound familiar to you? Information overload. Is any of you here suffering from what you might term information overload? Do you have difficulty in concentrating? Do you have a feeling of stress and overwhelm by the amount of digital work that it is that you have to do? I know that this one definitely applies to me, but do you feel compelled to keep your device on, or indeed with you when you go to bed, or when you're kind of trying to switch off? Do you feel compelled to have your device on and with you all times? Do you ever have a feeling of digital distraction? Do you ever have a feeling of just being distracted from something that you were absolutely focused on, and it's because of a digital device or service? Does that sound familiar to your experience of life? Do you have that feeling where you feel compelled to check social networks in case you miss something that could be super important, but you have that feeling of anxiety and frustration and angst that you need to check social networks in case you miss something? Also, are you experiencing increasing difficulty in finishing tasks that were once upon a time easy for you to complete, but are increasingly difficult. I know we all suffer things like this, and the great thing to know is that you're absolutely not alone. As I mentioned before, some of these things are things that I've suffered with, but you're absolutely in the right place, particularly those people who work with screens for a living. As I'll tell you all a little bit later on in the presentation, it's these feelings that really brought me to be working on this whole aspect of digital mindfulness. So as I mentioned before, you're absolutely not alone in these feelings, and you're in the right place if you want to be experiencing the following. Oops, I've gone the wrong way. So if you want to live a life in which your digital devices complement your work style and indeed your lifestyle instead of overwhelming it, this webinar is absolutely for you. If you want to experience greater happiness and energy in your digital environments, again, you're absolutely in the right place. If you want to improve the quality of your online and offline relationships, and if you want to become calmer and more focused in the midst of the torrent of emails and notifications, tweets, fear of missing out, etc., if these are the things that you want to experience, you're absolutely in the right place. If you want to avoid burnouts, as I'll explain, the word burnout, it really isn't an over simplification and an overestimation of how people really feel. Lots of people feel that with so many devices and so many services just dying for their attention, they do feel very, very close to, as they say, burnout. So again, these tips that I'm going to be sharing with you, I really do hope will help you live a better digital life. And finally, if you want to enhance the quality of your physical and emotional health whilst using these digital tools and services, absolutely you're in the right place. So these are some things that, here are some things that we're going to be covering today in the webinar. And I've kind of just tried to illustrate the problem as it is at the minute in terms of people's experiences with digital. But before we start, I know that certainly with the podcast and with the Digital Mindfulness website, there's a lot of either me asking questions or there are some some articles there by me. But I really want to give you a sense of who I am and just tell you a little bit more about myself and my journey to digital mindfulness. So there I am. There's a picture of me. My name's Lawrence Ampofo. My surname is Ghanaian and it's phonetic, and that's how you say it. So it's Ampofo. And I've been working on and off now with a contemplative practice since I was very young, since I was in single digits. But certainly my journey towards understanding what meditation was, understanding what mindfulness is, started in my early 20s when I was exposed to that whole world. But certainly it wasn't until 2005 that I started to join the dots between having a contemplative practice and the digital world. Now, I'm by training a social media analyst, and of course it's kind of implied in the term, but my job really all day is to sit down and watch social media, to look for trends, to analyze, to quantify and qualify, but see all of the different things that happen with human behavior and try and make sense of that. And by looking at all of that, all of that information, all of that social information, you start to get a greater sense of how human behavior changes over time. Now, I've done this since 2005, before Facebook was mainstream, before YouTube existed, and Twitter, before both of those even existed. So in terms of internet years, I'm absolutely ancient. And it's absolutely, I think it's also very difficult for us to think about a world in which these services don't exist because they're absolutely everywhere. But doing the social media analysis and having a long-standing contemplative practice, or certainly knowledge of the contemplative community gives me a really great vantage point from which I can observe all of these different changes that are going on in people's digital lives and their in-person lives. So digital mindfulness started in 2013, and I started it because I wanted to bring together certain groups of people who were starting to ask really important and deep questions about digital life. And really they came from my experience at the time, they came from two different camps. So there was one camp of people from the contemplative side, and we would start to be talking about the digital world and could you apply contemplative wisdom to the digital world? And that was really interesting to me, and those are the conversations I was having there. Sidetrack onto going to another group of people and looking at the ways that looking at the different ways that people, my colleagues, people who didn't perhaps have a contemplative practice but were saying that they were experiencing greater disconnection, they were experiencing burnout, they were experiencing physical and emotional problems as a result of using digital. These were the things allied together that really inspired me to start Digital Mindfulness in 2013. And you really can see a groundswell now of really smart people who are interested in just learning more and actively creating better relationships with digital devices and services. So now, digital mindfulness, like I said, we've been going since 2013, since mid-2013, and the podcast now is downloaded by people in over 70 different countries. So this is, I say that this is a groundswell, but people all over the world in 5 different continents are ready to have this discussion now. They're ready to talk about this. And it does transcend cultures, it transcends language, what we might see as language barriers. It transcends all of that. So this really is a global discussion. So the groundswell is happening. Empathic technologies are being created that understand how we feel in the different parts of our lives and that can respond accordingly. And businesses also are starting to understand this conversation that their employees and individuals are just having regarding this. Businesses are starting to understand that focusing on productivity, just simple productivity, and having people multitask all the time is having a terrible effect on the well-being of their employees and ultimately on the performance of the business. So people, like I was saying before, are beginning to understand that endlessly looking at their phones and having 24/7 digital connectivity can disconnect us from nature and from the people that we actually do want to spend our quality time with. So here's something I want to give you. Here's something to think about. Now, I'm not, I didn't start Digital Mindfulness, and I'm certainly not moaning about this person who came, who grew up before digital, was a widespread phenomenon and wanting to go back to the old days. I'm not going to caveat this webinar with that phrase. I'm not going to say that, because I think we just need to move beyond all of this. What I'm very interested in and what digital mindfulness really focuses on is that technology is here, and that's fine, it's here. But what we really need to understand is how can this help us? How can this improve us as human beings? And this is where what's coming now on this slide is so important. So for example, here are some of the problems that we face. Companies now, and this figure is from 2013, I'm not entirely sure what the figure is now, but companies lose more than $10,000 per year per employee to digital distraction. The amount of time, I think everyone who's listening to this is probably more familiar with this, but the average person checks their phones and mobile devices at least 150 times a day. Exposure to and awareness of other people's stressful life events contributes to your own stress. I thought this was absolutely amazing. And again, this comes from laboratory research, which, and again, Facebook conducted a similar controversial study on the way that emotions can be manipulated and can be diffused online. But one of the reasons why we feel stressed when we're online is that when we look at other people in their stressful lives, or if we see a picture or an image or a video of stress, that we automatically feel that, even if that person is on the other side of the world, we feel that person's stress. So exposure to social networks and other people's everyday lives almost brings us into it, particularly for very empathetic individuals. Businesses, and particularly UK businesses, spend approximately £2.4 billion on employees taking sick leave for mental health. And again, 2 weeks per year is lost, basically, which is related to information overload. So employees looking for the right information that's scattered across different documents and different services. The research has shown that on average 2 weeks per year is just lost on people being overwhelmed by the amount of information that's coming in and learning to sort through it. Now, this particular point made me feel, it made me laugh and it made me feel bad in equal measure. But human attention spans have decreased from 12 seconds in 2008 to now until now in 2013. Our attention spans are lower than a goldfish's. So our attention span is now 8 seconds, whereas the goldfish's attention span is 9 seconds. The average adult spends more than 8 hours a day consuming digital content. And whether that's kind of on our commute as we're going to work and looking at digital, advertising boards, or just looking at our digital devices, we spend, and this is the average adult, but we spend more than 8 hours a day consuming digital content. It's an extraordinary number of hours consuming this content, and it's only going up. Continuous task switching in the office has a high cognitive cost. In the office, where we're expected to be handling many different tasks at once, to be able to juggle lots of different things, it's meant this type of person that's apparently able to do this is held up as the paragon of efficiency and the champion of the workplace. Whereas what we're actually finding now is that continual task switching actually has a high cognitive cost. It lowers our ability to focus, to pay attention to things, and this is probably why it makes people feel very, very, very tired indeed. And the average adult spends, again, more than 8 hours a day consuming content. Okay, that's a little typo there. What I would like to do, though, is to take you on to this next quote by Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. And this quote really encapsulates the problem that we have here. And it's that we're moving from a world where computing power was scarce to a place now where it's almost limitless, and where the true scarce commodity is human attention. And again, it's quotes like this from really forward thinkers like Mr. Nadella that really inspired me to create Digital Mindfulness. This other quotation from Dr. Larry Rosen and Dr. Alexandra Samuel, two people that I had the great pleasure to interview on the podcast, said that digital overload may be the defining problem of today's workplace. We're bombarded with so many messages and alerts that even when we want to focus, it's almost impossible. Okay. So what I want to talk about now, what I want to talk about now are the 5 different steps that I'm going to talk about today that will lead you to be more digitally mindful in your professional lives. And in this time of immense digital distraction, help you to be more focused and more productive and, again, less stressed. But where have these 5 steps come from? I've not just dreamed them up, I've not just pulled them out of the nearest book. These 5 steps have come from thousands of hours of primary and secondary research into the ways that people can deliver peak performance, physical and mental well-being in the digital age. While many more things came up in the research, there are 5 prominent things related, 5 prominent elements that are related to digital mindfulness that we found that have the greatest impact on gaining focus and productivity in a digital age. And here are those 5 things here. The first one is mindfulness. And I'm just going to say something now is that in addition to mindfulness, I'm going to be talking about, I'm also going to be talking about mindful design, because this was something that was really important that came up and very closely related to mindfulness. And it dovetails very, very nicely. The next is flow. The third is automation. Number 4 are mind flows and not workflows. And number 5 is emotional intelligence. So let's begin. But before I talk about these 5 elements here, I know that we don't have a lot of time, but I really want to talk to you about what digital mindfulness actually is. Excuse me. I really want to talk to you about what digital mindfulness actually is. And perhaps the best starting point to talk about digital mindfulness is by explaining what it's not. Now, digital mindfulness is not about overlaying technology over mindfulness. So it's not simply about saying, okay, there's an application there or a piece of software that can help you meditate. That's not strictly digital mindfulness. That's a very small part of that. The actual term digital mindfulness, it was inspired for me by the definition of mindfulness that was given by Jon Kabat-Zinn, the pioneer of mindfulness-based stress therapy. So mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy. His definition is this, just here. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in a present moment, and not judgmentally. And I thought that this particular, Kabat-Zinn's particular definition was an excellent jumping off point to start to think more clearly about the quality of digital life for everybody. So when thinking about the quality of our digital lives, this quotation really helped me to ask better and deeper questions. And some of the questions that I came up with were questions like this. For example, why are people more disconnected when we're hyper-connected? Why do people claim that that they're more disconnected? They feel lonelier. They don't feel as connected to people when it's easier to get hold of people than it ever has been. What would happen if we applied the same awareness that we're trying to cultivate in mindfulness to the digital environment? What would happen then? What would it take to get developers, designers, experts, and the public talking and working together to get us there? How would our lives be different? Would it even be a future that's worth trying to create? And lastly, what would our digital tools and digital environments look like if they were mindful of us? And it was from there, it was from starting to ask these questions to experts, to lay people, that I really came upon this definition of digital mindfulness. Now, before I do show this definition of mindfulness, I'm very happy to engage in critique, and it's very much a working definition, but this is a definition that I find to be most helpful in engaging with people about this topic. And like I was saying before, is a really good starting off point. And the definition of digital mindfulness is this. Digital mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way to your digital experiences, maintaining a moment-by-moment awareness of your thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, and surroundings without judgment. This awareness fosters interactions with technology that complement the best of human nature, inspiring global society to a new collective and moral consciousness. Now, this definition of digital mindfulness, as you can see, it's blending together the definition of mindfulness by Jon Kabat-Zinn, but also trying to interact with within this definition a focus on our digital experiences, and how then a deep focus and deep attention placed on our digital experiences, what that would ultimately lead to. Examples of digital mindfulness, to be honest, according to this definition, at the moment are a little bit thin on the ground, but they are there, and they're becoming more mainstream. As people begin to think more about this and more about the quality of their digital experiences, we're starting to see more products and more services go online. For example, here are some examples just here. On the left, you have Time Well Spent, and Time Well Spent is an agency or a collective of scientific people with scientific expertise, designers, technologists, all trying to find a way that technology can be used to help people spend their time well. It's the understanding. I definitely advise you to go and check out this site. It's timewellspent.io. But designing technology in a way that understands that human time is sacred to us, and that the quality of the human experience is as important as the technology itself. In the middle there, you have an example of what has been called Empathic Technology, and this is the Doppel wristwatch, which has a sensor on there that can sense when you're feeling, particularly when you're feeling down, or whether your energy is particularly elevated, and can then produce vibrations that bring you more into equilibrium, or can raise your energy or to lower it. But this idea of technologies wrapping themselves around the human experience to learn from the human experience and then work with the human, these are examples of digital mindfulness. And finally, we have here Think Up. I'm not sure how many people know of Think Up, but it's almost like a kind of analytics platform that exists on top of social networks, and it enables people to have a snapshot, to have a view of their behavior on social media. So you can see at any one time if the people you're forwarding, the people you're responding to, the stuff that you like, whether it's inflammatory, whether it's peaceful, whether it's happy, what type of content are you pushing back out into the world? Who are you on social media? So this is what Think Up really allows you to do. It's almost like turning that awareness of you on social media back on yourself, makes you more aware. So these are examples of digital mindfulness, and certainly the focus of what we're trying to achieve here. Now, moving on, because I'm aware that we're running out of time. Um, here's the very first of the 5 steps that are going to help you be more focused and be more productive in the digital age. And the first of those is mindfulness. This was the very big thing that came up in all of the research, that people who are digitally mindful, this is one of the things, the cruxes that they use. Now, adopting a mindfulness practice is so important for manifold reasons. This ancient practice can provide benefits for people even when they're doing short amounts of meditation, perhaps on your commute to work, for example. And I found that this particular thing was really interesting because speaking to digital professionals, they would either fall into one of 2 boxes, where either developing a mindfulness practice was very difficult for them in terms of time, in terms of the commitment they would have to devote to it, and it was just not something that they could fit into their already busy lives. Whereas the actual research shows, and the people that experienced the most benefit, the people that didn't report feeling overloaded or being digitally distracted, they were able to incorporate even a tiny amount of meditation, even if it was on their commute to work. Even 5 minutes was useful. So with its roots in Buddhism, and again, although all religions have some kind of contemplative practice, regular mindfulness meditation can have enormous benefits on your physical and emotional health, and certainly can improve your digital experiences. By enhancing our awareness of our internal and external states, mindfulness improves mental and physical vitality and resilience. And here are just some of the ways that a regular mindfulness practice can benefit you. It improves your well-being. It enhances creativity. It improves mental health. It certainly improves focus. It reduces stress. It enhances working memory. It improves attention span and also decision-making capacities. Now, normally, it was my idea today to open the session today with a very small meditation practice, but I'm very aware of the time that we don't have, and I want to be very respectful of everybody's time. But it's certainly something that's going to be incorporated into the breakfast sessions that we have. So that's mindfulness. That's adopting a mindfulness practice and the benefits that it can have, even a small amount of meditation, even on the way to work, way to and from work, can really help. But I want to also talk about mindful design. I wasn't sure if I'd have enough time to, but I really want to put this in. It's absolutely worth thinking about mindfully designing your workplace and your digital environments as a way to changing your behaviors and your mindset and the quality of your life. Now, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by mindful design? Mindful design describes how objects can be designed to promote mindful attention in terms of how they're used and the consequences of their use. Right, so that's kind of a complicated way of saying that the objects, having a mind, using something that's been mindfully designed helps you to place more attention on the actual object itself and the action of using that object. Really fascinating idea. So mindful design works by creating greater awareness in people, in the user, of their environment and of their actions. So what's an example of mindful design? Well, in this context, if you listen to the interview that I had with Michael Radpava for the Holsti Manifest, from the Holsti company, excuse me, the Holsti Manifesto is an example of mindful design. It's an example of something, in this case, if it was the digital art, the case of the technology that inspires greater awareness, not only of one's internal state, but also the external state. And this is one of the reasons I think that it's been so popular, that it does, that it is mindfully designed. And it does help people to become more aware of themselves, and internally and externally. Another simple example of mindful design, and again, this is a little bit, it can be a little bit contentious, but another example of mindful design is even something as benign as the black box that we have in cars, the telematics sensor that collects all of the data that interprets driving behavior. Now, the reason why this is mindful design is because every single time now a person gets into the car, they're very aware that their driving behavior is being recorded. And because their driving behavior is being recorded, that means that they're way more accountable to insurance companies, that their premium is determined on their driving behavior. And so this small black box enables us to have much greater awareness of how we behave in the car, on the road, in the world. There are other mindful apps out there that are slowly making their way into the mainstream. Years ago, I remember talking to a group of people and asking whether mindfulness could ever be engineered into a machine. The consensus at the time was that it wasn't possible. But now it seems as though empathic technologies, or calming technologies, or contemplative technologies, whatever word or phrase you'd like to use to describe it, all of these are becoming much more mainstream, and they're beginning to take a more prominent place on the landscape of tools that have strong elements of mindful design. Okay, so let's move on to point number 2, and this is flow. So attaining that optimal state of consciousness in which we're totally absorbed in the completion of a task, where time either slows down or speeds up, is what the famous psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, I've butchered that name, but Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, termed flow. Some athletes, and this was where I became aware of this phenomenon, but some athletes claim that this state of mind is called the zone. And utilizing flow is, as part of becoming digitally mindful, was reported as being a crucial part of increasing flow and productivity and focus in the digital age. Now, how do we get into a flow state? Now, Csikszentmihalyi claimed that to get into a flow state, because again, I want you to take this information home with you and to use, the first thing is that we have to have intense and focused concentration on the present moment. So it's not worth, in order to get into a flow state, thinking too much about the past or the future or what might happen inhibits us from getting into that flow state, but rather intense and focused concentration on the now gets us into that state. The merging of action and awareness. So it's not enough to just be aware that we want, and aware of ourselves, aware of nature, and being aware that we want to get into flow. Merging that with action also puts us there. Loss of self-consciousness. An increase in the feeling of self-control. The alteration of time. Time either speeds up or slows down when we get into that flow state, depending on what it is that we need to do. And also that the experience is rewarding. Now, one of the reasons why I love the concept of flow, especially as it relates to digital experiences, is that when we access flow, when we're able to access it at will, we can enjoyably complete tasks that are that are far more difficult to complete. They take much longer to complete, and we can complete them in less time when we're in this flow state. So as a busy digital professional, how do you access this blissful state of mind when you're in the hurly-burly and the maelstrom of the workplace? Well, here are some tips that might help you. So the first thing is to work on a task that is challenging but not impossible. So working on a task that you can actually, that is challenging to you, that you can achieve, but not something that's so difficult that's going to discourage you. Being discouraged also inhibits you from being in your flow state. Eating for energy and not for pleasure, and this was something that I've discovered through painful experience, and it was something that came through in the research. But people who are digitally mindful, people who could access their flow state at will, were very conscious about eating for energy. So eating foods that are nutrient dense, that give them energy, sometimes even going into a fasted state, but using that to enter your flow state, to be more productive, to have more focus in the digital age. This was absolutely important. Of course, minimizing distractions which have a cognitive load on us, that was another important element of accessing your flow state. Knowing your peak time, so knowing when it is that you're most active, knowing when you have the most energy in the part of the day. This was a really important way to access the flow state, and then again, just get all of the benefits of being focused and productive in the digital age. Okay, so moving on to the next one, that's emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence has emerged as one of the pivotal elements on which to be digitally mindful, and this really came through from the research. Emotional intelligence, which is the capacity to control and express one's emotions and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. It was this was a really important element that helped people to be digitally mindful, but it also helped them to produce more and to be way more focused in their jobs. And emotional intelligence is normally found in these three skills that I've listed here. So for example, emotional awareness. Now, emotional awareness as the ability to identify your own emotions and to identify emotions in other people. And again, I'm thinking of people who deal in client-facing jobs or who deal in customer-facing jobs. Being aware of people's emotions online and being aware of your own emotions really, really helps in gaining a higher emotional intelligence quotient, if you like, but also to be more productive and focused in the digital age. Emotional control, which is the ability to harness emotions and then apply them to tasks like thinking and solving. This was a really important skill in increasing your emotional intelligence. And then the ability to manage emotions, including the ability to regulate your own and influence the emotional states of other people. This skill was seen as incredibly important in developing your own emotional intelligence stores. The great news with people who are in the process of developing their emotional intelligence is that mindfulness is being reported, mindfulness meditation, and just being mindful in lab settings, excuse me, is that it helps increase emotional intelligence levels. So a regular mindfulness practice, or even learning to harness our flow, enables us to become more emotionally intelligent. Emotionally intelligent leaders in a digital age have been documented to enhance not just their influence in the workplace, but also the company's wider customer base. A higher emotional intelligence quotient improves employee performance and strengthens emotional resilience. And this is a particularly important skill, like I was saying before, when dealing with things like customer complaints or client engagement, particularly because in the digital age, this happens in real time. So automation, excuse me. So automation is a really important element that emerged in helping people to get focused and enhance their productivity. Companies who are most digitally mindful and the people who are most in balance with their digitized lives, they learn to automate part of their digital existence. So, and the research on this is really, really compelling. As I was saying before, every time that we're interrupted by a notification or a tweet or an update or even the phone ringing, it actually has a real measurable emotional and cognitive cost. So when we begin a task that's challenging to us, that engages us, and then we become in some way, we become emotionally invested in completing that task, not just working on it, but completing that task. So any time that we become distracted from a task, particularly when we're emotionally invested in, it becomes effortful for us to shift our attention, right? There's an energy and effort cost for us to switch our attention. And this is particularly so when we're looking at things, not just important things that require our attention, but also just objects of diversion. And over time, if we keep task switching from diversion to what we should be working on, in and out, our ability to focus then becomes impaired. So to the extent that we can automate part of our lives, because it's not always possible and it's not always advisable, people that can do this really experience far more simplified. They create more space, essentially. And it's a fantastic way for them to create space to focus on one particular task. And also combined with the other approaches that we've spoken about today, these particular automating some of your processes can help you to become more digitally mindful. So some questions that you can ask yourself in leading up to automating your life, automating part of your digitized lives are, for example, is every single email that comes into your inbox important, right? Or can some be triaged somewhere? Are all the notifications and windows that you have open right now on your screens, are they important? Are they essential? Can your digital life be simplified and cut down? And here's just a list of a few things that, and again, that came through, that you can use right now to help to automate your life and actually to make your machines and your devices a little bit more mindful. So for example, typing instead of scrolling. Now on our smartphones, on our computers, sometimes there are pages and pages of apps to go through, and that continuous scrolling, again, it has a psychological effect. All of these different things, I'm giving you a lot of information today, but I'm going to be talking about this in detail, much more focused on other webinars. But by typing the app that we want directly, instead of scrolling, this really, really helps to make our machines more mindful, to automate our process, to kind of get to where we want to get to much more quickly, instead of being diverted by these, they almost look like M&Ms, these different colored apps. Only receive notifications from people. I thought this was a really brilliant thing that we can do, receiving a notification, there's an event happening, or there's a game that someone wants us to sign up to, or there's a free offer or something. Again, when we start looking at this and we divert our attention, it has an emotional and cognitive cost. So only receiving notifications from people, which is, again, something we can set up, this really, really helps. Using a social media scheduler, using only 1 or 2 pages of apps. I know that this can be quite difficult for some people, but only having the apps on the front page, the apps that you absolutely use every single day, and just having 2 pages and putting the rest of the other apps into folders will really help you to becoming a bit more mindful, and helping you to produce a lot more and become more focused with your digital devices. And the last one is to set up email filters by ensuring that only really important or only messages from people that you consider to be important actually get through and engage with your attention. Okay, so the very last point I want to get through, and we're almost out of time, is mind flows, not workflows. And I've saved the best and most interesting section until last. I've gone for a strong finish. And I really want to talk to you about this because this was an absolutely fascinating idea and something that was really impactful that you can implement right now. So way before the digital age, the idea of automating workflows were the main ideas. It was the main driver for businesses and the key to efficiency for large-scale production. But much of our working lives can't be standardized into a software-dominated workflow, which is what most businesses try to do. We all know this. We all know, for example, which experience is better. The customer service representative who follows the script to the letter, or the person who's actively trying to solve a customer's problem. The one who uses his or her thinking skills is the one who uses his or her thinking skills with the customer is normally the one that we trust more, and the one certainly who will win our loyalty. So the software we tend to use has little or no connection to the ways that business actually gets done. So for example, we could use a CRM tool to input the information about a potential person that we want to do business with. But that CRM tool wouldn't analyze a person in all their complexity and design an offer that would give you the best chance of working with them. So mind flows are goal setting patterns, goal thinking patterns. And when I talk of that, I'm talking about things like comparing, evaluating, summarizing. Okay, and mind flows are used by people who are generally engaged in complex analysis and decision making. So the main idea with mind flows as opposed to workflows is that it's important to know how you think in given a certain task. Okay, not what you think, but it's important to know how you think in a certain task. And then think to yourself, right, given this is how I think, how will software mold around my way of thinking to support that process? Okay, and these are what mind flows. So understanding your mind flow, understanding how you think in a certain business process, and then how technology can then wrap around that. So patterns of thinking are common across many business situations, such as sales, hiring, evaluation, etc. And the software you use should make you perform better and vice versa. The software you use should form a dialogue between the two of you. It shouldn't overflow, it shouldn't overwhelm you, it shouldn't overflow you. So take a look at this. Take a look at this list on the different ways that technology can be mindful of your mind flows. There are also some great examples of mindful technologies that are already making an impact in the market. For example, we have couch surfing. Now, there was a really interesting study that was conducted by Joe Edelman on couch surfing and the different metrics it uses for success. Couch surfing is the application which allows travelers, backpackers, to find a couch, someone's couch around the world, and to have that accommodation for however long they need it for. And the way that websites normally, social networks definitely, measure success is by the amount of time that people spend on the site. Whereas Couchsurfing flipped that around entirely and wanted to measure the just how quickly people were able to find a couch, do what it was they needed to do so that they could have better experiences of life. This is an example of mindful technology. This is an example of technology that understands the mind flows of travelers, understanding that this is what they want to do and that they just need something to help them facilitate their thought process, find the safest, the most affordable accommodation, and then get them there. The next example is Unstuck, which is unstuck.com. And this app helps to foster human interaction and connection. It's really, really an excellent tool. And it basically helps people to get unstuck in their creative endeavors by connecting with other people. And it also helps to disempower people's negative beliefs. So again, this piece of software which understands the mind flow of being stuck and helping people become unstuck is really a really great example. And finally, Lift. The idea that we're looking for our apps to be, or our technology to be simplified doesn't always increase the experience of people. So at times people need friction in their digital experiences to encourage more human connection and more personal growth. And Lyft is a really good example of this. So Lyft, the car sharing app, helps people to grow, helps people to form connections and to form communities by sharing vacant car space. So you're having all of these examples of mindful technologies which understand the mind flows of people with different tasks and then mold themselves around people rather than the other way around, so that it becomes a dialogue between the human and the software, and understanding your own mind flows and then which technology helps you to best complete the task that you're focused on will really help. So let's just recap. I've just gone through 5 different methods that will enhance the focus and productivity of your digitized lives. And these methods again are mindfulness and mindful design, automation, flow, emotional intelligence, and mind flows. So by the time that this webinar ends, you'll have received a lot of really great information from me. This information, as I mentioned before, it's the result of thousands of hours of research that's being conducted into this and is ongoing. But you'll have received a lot of this great information. And the points I really, really hope are things that you can take away and use right now to improve the quality of your digital life. It's important to remember also that these points, these 5 points that I've mentioned here, you might achieve modest success in attaining the life you desire if you use maybe 1 or 2, or you use them on your own. But by using everything all together, by having a mindfulness practice, learning how to automate parts of your digitized life, accessing your flow, becoming more emotionally intelligent, understanding your mind flow, you will become way more focused and way more productive in your digitized lives. So let's get honest with each other. What has your digital life been like in the last quarter? I know what mine has been like, but what has your digital life been like in the last quarter? And what if the next 3 months were like the last 3 months? I'm going to share with you step-by-step instructions on how to implement what I've been talking about right now. Because the main fact is that if you don't really know how to do any of what I've been talking about, to implement a mindfulness practice at work, or to access your flow, excuse me, or if you're just doing them on your own, life can be a bit difficult. So with what I'm about to say, you're going to be able to become more focused, calmer, creative, and live the balanced digital life that you've always wanted. And the thing I want to share now with you is this. So we've created, on the back of this research, these workshops, online workshops for digital mindfulness in the workplace. And there are a series of 6 different online workshops. The first one is mindfulness in the workplace, understanding how you can build in a mindfulness practice into your work so that you can then become less stressed, become way more focused and creative and empathic, and overall better equipped to deal with all of the stresses in your digitized life. Number 2, behavioral design. This is something that unfortunately I wasn't able to cover today because we've just run out of time. But the second workshop is going to focus on behavioral design. How can we design, excuse me, our own behaviors so that we can get the best out of our digital environments? Number 3 is the flow workshop. Number 4, emotional intelligence workshop. Number 5, as I just mentioned, understanding and implementing mind flows within mindful technologies. And the 6th workshop that we have is automation. And each one of these workshops on their own in general costs $499. And so the total value of all 6 of these workshops is $2,994. Now, okay. So one of the really great things about these workshops, as I'm going to be talking about, is that they're CPD certified. So they all count towards your continued professional development, and you all get certified from that perspective. But the really great thing about this is that these approaches all have a wealth of scientific testing that supports them. The literature on flow and mindfulness and behavioral design in the workplace, it's enormous, and we're taking all of that great information, that great wisdom, and then packing it into these different workshops so that you and your team learn how to just be better, how to be less stressed, how to be more creative in the digital environments. They've been tested in workplaces around the world, and this is often to great success. So here's what you get. There are 6 live certified workshops. So 6 live CPD certified workshops. On the workshops, in addition, you'll be able to ask questions, not just of me, but also of the other passionate digital mindfulness trainers. You'll get certification on completion, and the total value of that is $2,994. Here's this quote I love again from a Google employee, Tristan Harris, who says that I feel constantly lured into distractions. I get sucked endlessly into email and distracting websites. I get bulldozed by interruptive text messages, back and forth scheduling, or find myself scrolling a website in a trance at 1 a.m. This really is the scale of what we're dealing with here, and what we're trying to do with, in fact, what we do with these online workshops is, again, showing your team how you can avoid all of that, how you can avoid feeling like Tristan is describing here, and really get the best out of yourself in your digital experiences. Okay, if you do get this today, then there are bonuses for people. So one of the things that you do get, so the other bonus thing that you do get is that you get lifetime access to our forthcoming Tech Life Balance Virtual Summit, which is taking place in October. And you're the first group that I mentioned in this too, which is why you're getting this bonus. But the Tech Life Balance Summit, it's the very first of its kind. There are going to be more than 20 keynote speakers. There are going to be workshops from experts all over the world. And like I said before, it's very much the first event of its kind. You're also going to get to network in private with other people, other professionals who are interested in tech life balance, in things like we've just been talking about, raising focus on productivity, digital distraction, internet addiction, contemplative technologies. The list just goes on. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic event. The total value of that, of access to that, is $549. And so here's what you get when you decide to come on and work with us. You get 6 live workshops by digital mindfulness experts. You get live coaching, and you also get lifetime access to the Tech Life Balance Virtual Summit, which is taking place this year. And the total value of all of that is $3,543. So is there another way to do this? There are absolutely different ways to do this. You can definitely go and take classes or do all of the reading and research that I've done and that we've been doing here. You can take all of these separate elements and at a personal cost of thousands, but you can take all of those and then try and implement them yourself. And I would certainly recommend reading some of the kind of the top books or the top articles on everything that we've been talking about, but you could definitely do that. But the truth is that there's nothing like this in the market. There's no organization that's dealing with digital mindfulness. There's no program out there that deals with digital mindfulness in such an expansive way. So certainly there are mindfulness in business courses or workshops. Certainly there are those. Certainly there are definitely flow hacking courses, but there's nothing that has the full remit of the approaches and that focuses them on improving people's digital lives. The fact is that there's no comparison. And today you won't pay as much as that. So the whole package, as I was explaining before, is $3,543. For the next week, we're going to be pricing everything, and that's lifetime access to the Tech Life Balance Summit, the virtual summit in October, and also to the live coaching and to the 6 live workshops, and everything there is for $499. All you have to do is go to the website, go to digitalmindfulness.net/workshop, and you'll see all of the information there about the different workshops that we do. So at the moment, I'd just like to ask if there are any questions. I've come to the end, and I'd just like to find out, does anyone have any questions for me? I know I've given you a lot of a lot of information. Okay, well, if there are any questions, if anyone has any other questions after this, after listening to this, please feel free to contact me. Contact me on Lawrence with a W at digitalmindfulness.net, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. I know it's a lot of information, but what we'll do is in the show notes related to this, I'll put up all of the references to the articles that I've been talking about, and you can read those for yourself. But I just want to say thank you so much for spending time with me today. It's a long time to be listening to information that's quite dense, but I thank you all for spending time with me, and I look forward to seeing you all again at a live breakfast session. So thank you very much, and I will hopefully speak to you all soon.